So about 40% of US consumers who have a smartphone or device are using that device while watching TV. One of the big problems about that, however, is often what they're doing on their device has got nothing to do with what's on TV. They are emailing, they're on Facebook, etc. And so that's a problem. That's a problem for the TV networks like Bravo, and that's a problem for advertisers as well, who are spending billions of dollars on these TV experiences. So the whole foundation of Zeebox is giving consumers a reason to come back to live TV by offering a more compelling experience in terms of offering richer discovery, better interactivity with that first screen, better information about the show that they're watching, finding out what other friends are watching that show, chatting with them, and also being able to buy things that they see on the main screen. That's the vision of Zeebox.
Wow, it sounds like the Holy Grail. So Jason and I have worked together for quite a few months now when Zeebox first came to the US in September. So can you tell us, how's it going so far, and is it proving to be the solution, e.g. are consumers buying in?
I think they are. Look, we've surpassed 1 million downloads in a little over 3 months. That's the fastest rate of download growth, I think, in second screen history. So it's really kind of struck a chord with consumers. And we think that the reason for that is around the fact that it's bringing kind of live back to live. It's really giving consumers a reason to engage with the first screen. Like, for example, this weekend with the Super Bowl, one of your famous kind of talent, Nene, okay, is engaging.
Real Housewives of Atlanta.
And also on Glee and The New Normal. And literally what Nene's doing is she's hosting a viewing party on Zeebox. And what we're doing is, it's the anti-game, okay? So you've got all these dozens of second screen apps that are offering richer and richer sports statistics, and that's fantastic. And to be clear, there's going to be a great sports experience on Zeebox, but our anti-game is avoiding those Me Too offerings. So what we're doing therefore is a lot of people watch the Super Bowl not just for the game itself, but for the event, right? For the commercials, for the halftime performance by Beyonce, etc. So Nene's going to be hosting a viewing party where anyone who downloads the Zeebox app can join in and actually have a live chat with Nene, talk about the Super Bowl, talk about anything that they like. But in parallel to that, we've built a kind of a visualizer, which we're calling the Buzz Bubbler. What that's going to do is actually, as there's social buzz about the major commercials and the brands that go along with them, you'll see these kind of bubbles contracting and expanding. And again, it's going to be a great way for Nene and others to talk about what's popping most while watching the Super Bowl. And that really is a core premise of what Zeebox does, is making TV even better.
What do you think it's going to take until, we were talking earlier, when I use the app, I basically talk to my other NBCU employees and to Jason Forbes, because it's very social, but at this point, none of my friends, who it may be because I'm too elderly, are on it. So what's it going to take to get that sort of adoption where everyone's on it, everyone's using it like a Twitter?
Yeah, and candidly, that's been one of our biggest challenges, is that we are relatively late to launch in the US. Many others have done it already, and they've defined the space as social TV, and that's not what Zeebox is all about. Zeebox, as I mentioned, social is one part, but it's interactivity, information, commerce, etc. And that's a much richer experience. Unfortunately, for many consumers and for TV networks, they've had this social TV experience, and candidly, for people over 35, finding out what your friends are doing while you're watching a show is often not that important. So the whole premise of Zeebox, therefore, is to find what's going to pop with specific audiences and making that work within Zeebox. So for people who are over 25, 26 in your case, okay, finding how that's going to work and finding an experience within Zeebox so that not just you, but friends like you, okay, are being given a reason to come to that live experience is really where we're focusing very much right now. So this whole premise of community, where often, we were actually with Spotify a couple of weeks ago, and they talked about, in music, you often think that most of your friends' taste in music sucks, okay? And it's kind of similar in TV as well. If you look at your social graph, you don't care what your friends are watching. Some people do, but many people do not. So the whole premise of Zeebox is, well, what if you like Game of Thrones, Homeland, The Voice, and Keeping Up with the Kardashians, an unusual 4 data points. But those 4 data points actually allow you to find other people like you on Zeebox. And so, Lisa, there may be others like you who you don't yet know, and that's what we're going to kind of introduce in Zeebox.
So it's now a dating service? So it's like an affinity dating service?
It's an amazing live TV dating service. That's exactly right.
And so where do you fit in the lexicon of other second screen apps? As I spoke earlier, Bravo has its own second screen app. So how do I not look at you as some sort of aggregator and that we're competitive? How can we all coexist, or do you plan on taking over the world?
No, well, maybe in due course, but I think certainly initially we call it kind of a T model, right? At the end of the day, people change channels, okay? They switch from one network to another and from one show to another. And as long as people change channels, having a show-specific app is often not going to cut the mustard. We call it the app graveyard, where literally what you have is all these apps that you've downloaded that you never use again. Obviously, the Bravo app is not that case, but there are others where these show-specific apps, there's huge promotion, you download the show-specific app, but you only use that app when the show is on. So the whole premise of Zeebox is it's a horizontal play. And certainly with Bravo, the whole premise is how can we reintroduce people to the great Bravo experience? And ultimately what Bravo can offer in terms of its own app is a richer TV everywhere experience, for example. So finding how the two can coexist and driving traffic, funneling audiences back to Bravo and remind them of all the cool things that the Bravo app offers is really that coexistence model that sits underneath that T.
So how does the business model work in terms of, is it mostly advertising, and what do you think you can offer beyond what exists today? I mean, obviously for, when I read the New York Times app, that screen comes across, like, what is it in Zeebox? Is there something sort of revolutionary about how you approach advertising? Yeah,
I don't think it's revolutionary, more evolutionary. Like one of the things that both networks and advertisers care the most about is, are people actually watching my ad, right? Unless you've got kind of TV scanning, if people switch away from a show during Desperate Housewives, for example, or The Real Housewives of Atlanta, unlikely as that is, if they change channel, TV networks want to know that. Why did they change channel? So if you're watching Zeebox, one of the most powerful pieces of data is during the show, where people came from. Were people watching The Kardashians, or were they watching Game of Thrones, or what show were they watching before they came to your show? And if they left during the show, where did they go to? The same premise is exactly the same for advertisers. Being able to show to advertisers when your ad comes on, did you know, for example, that more men than women tuned away? Or younger demos tuned in versus older demos who tuned away. That allows advertisers to understand how is their ad performing. But most importantly, one of the challenges with TV, it's got phenomenal reach. What it lacks, and Jonathan just talked about this, is it lacks some of the power of the second screen in terms of interactivity, etc. So imagine, for example, there's a Chevy ad, beautiful 30-second spots, and while that ad is running on your Zeebox app, you can actually have an enhanced, synchronized second screen experience. So when that 30-second spot is on, you can actually enter in your email address for a free test drive of the latest model. So what you're doing is you're taking the advantage of the power of the internet via Zeebox and tying that in a synchronous fashion with the power of TV.
Do you think agencies are prepared to handle all these options?
And that's critical. Certainly as we go into the upfronts, we've absolutely looked to simplify this as much as possible. So the whole premise therefore is, if you want to buy a big show like The Voice, you can buy The Voice, and in addition you can buy a Z package, something that bolts on. So anybody who watches The Voice, you can actually sponsor that voice experience, and anytime you're running an ad, American Express or other, when that ad shows, you can have a synchronized Zeebox ad as well. It's really simple. It's just one extra price point and the whole thing works automatically. And that simplicity, we believe, is the key to having agencies and advertisers further support the model.
So I had the honor of working with Jason on the first advertiser of Zeebox in the United States, which was American Express. And in their case, they really wanted to activate e-commerce, which was one of the things that interested me most about Zeebox when I saw it, the year and a half before, when I saw Anthony Rose demonstrate it. So how does e-commerce play a role? Is that part of the advertising role? Do you see that as a separate revenue stream? Where does that fit in?
I think back to the 5 pillars. I think commerce is a critical pillar. And candidly, speaking of Jennifer Aniston Sweater, hopefully one day she'll be a huge Zeebox fan, but no one quite yet knows how important commerce is to consumers. Certainly our own data suggests that 15% of US consumers have often watched TV and want to buy what they see on the main screen. Everybody gets the purchase funnel. You see something, but often it's many weeks or months before you end up purchasing that product. The whole premise and the power of Zeebox is it shrinks the purchase funnel down to 0. You can literally see something, as in the case of American Express, with Life After Top Chef, during the show or after the show. If I see the knife set on the show, I can actually click a buy button and the product is mine. And that kind of premise of instantaneous purchase of what you're seeing on the main screen will not appeal to everybody. But if there is 15% of consumers out of a very large market who think that that's an enhanced experience, fantastic. And I think for Zeebox and for networks, the whole premise is it's got to be relevant. If you're bombarding people with merchandising options, consumers are going to switch off. But if you have choice, contextually relevant merchandise that's got to do with the show, we think it could be a pretty interesting place to place some bets.
What about distributors? When we were both sort of looking, you were working at Time Warner at the time, I work for NBC, which is owned by Comcast, and both of our, distributors seem interested in this. Recently you announced that Comcast, you can use the Zeebox as a remote control on Xfinity. What is the implication of that?
Well, I think similarly with TV networks, for distributors as well, you don't have Comcast friends or DirecTV friends. You don't have NBC friends or eFriends, you've got friends, right? And the whole attraction for Comcast and for other MVPDs is by partnering with Zeebox, again, it expands the vertical. So it's a great way for Comcast to enable a kind of a horizontal experience and drive non-subscribers, churn subscribers, potentially back to becoming Comcast subscribers. But critically, as you suggest, with Comcast now we've lit this up, so any Zeebox app owner who's downloaded the app, it's a free app and literally is a Comcast subscriber, can change TV, can change channels on their TV with Zeebox. So you can do away with your plastic remote and actually use Zeebox as your killer remote control app. And that's obviously a very attractive feature because it means not only can you search, you discover new content via Zeebox. Andy Liu from Buddy TV, so the average US consumer spends 8 minutes trying to find new content. So if we can actually make that discovery experience richer so you find new content, then fantastic. You can actually change channel on Zeebox as your remote control.
How critical is the ACR automatic content recognition piece that I know you announced at CES? Since you're live streaming, you know, I mean, why is that so important?
It's not. It's certainly it's an additional layer. At the end of the day, we believe that live TV is ultimately where most TV networks and advertisers care. But certainly, there's a time-shifted world, and we're very much embracing that. So we see ACR as being a kind of an incremental layer from a technology stack perspective that will make for a richer experience. Ultimately, if we can be more accurate in making sure that what's on the TV and what's on Zeebox are completely in sync, that's a good thing for consumers. And certainly, if they can access their time-shifted library, VOD, DVR or other via ACR, that's again an incremental experience that we thoroughly embrace.
I feel like there's no question Zeebox is a fantastic tool for marketers and for distributors and programmers. Is it really a great experience for the consumer, or where do you want to get to, since for it to be successful it has to be a great consumer experience?
You know, candidly, you know, the consumer is where we began, the consumer is where we end. I think ad sales and the other pieces are secondary, and I think we struck a chord with consumers. The fact that we have, you know, more than 1.2 million downloads already is a fantastic story. We've more than 500,000 unique. So consumers are not just downloading the app, they're coming to the Zeebox party, but they're coming back to the Zeebox party. If you've got this great download number, but no one's coming back again, that's problematic. Our average engagement times are 30 minutes per session. Other than Facebook, we can't really think of another app that is so sticky with consumers. I think consumers that try it go, wow, there's this great discovery, there's great social, there's great information. Ultimately, different consumers have different needs. And the great thing about Zeebox is it works for all those different needs in one holistic experience.
I guess my last question is, for Zeebox, what keeps you up at night? Are there certain disruptors or you know, major changes you see coming down the pipeline, or something you really need to do to make it a success?
Yeah, we're on a journey, and I think the fun part about this is we're on that journey. You know, it's an open platform. We're very much looking for as many partners as possible to coexist in this platform. So any TV network, any distributor is welcome to join, and we're on that journey together. We're learning that some things pop, some things don't pop. You know, if you go to Zeebox, you'll find some of our widgets and our features are being dropped away as we're learning more about what's resonating. So I think it's what we don't know that's exciting, but also we need to be thoughtful as well, making sure that we're constantly listening to consumers to offer an even better and better Zeebox experience.